Hi, Cornerstone, it's Scott. Today's Cornerstone connection comes from John chapter 8, specifically verse 12. Several years ago, my wife and I went on a vacation to the Outer Banks of North Carolina. The Outer Banks are a strip of islands about 30 miles off the coast, and this is known as the graveyard of the Atlantic. Over 1,000 ships have wrecked over the years on those Outer Banks. That's why it's so important that lighthouses be made so that ships will know to keep a safe distance away from the shore. You know, light is very helpful. It paves the way. It leads to life. And that's the whole point that Jesus draws out for us in John chapter 8. Here we see that he is the light of the world. And his words carry a lot of weight at the particular time in which they were said, as I'll share in just a moment. But look with me at John chapter 8, verse 12. It says, "Again, Jesus spoke to them, saying, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." You see, Jesus is saying this at the Feast of Tabernacles. I really wish that we celebrated the Feast of Tabernacles because it was a week-long campout. How much fun would that be? A week-long campout with family and friends, remembering what God did as he miraculously delivered his people from Egypt. And so they would dwell in tents, remembering this time is very experiential as they remembered. And it was also just a week-long party filled with light, particularly at night. So you see, there were these 4 large torches that would be lit up at night at the temple. And people would sing and dance and celebrate and remember how God delivered them by a pillar of fire by night in the Exodus account. And Jesus here, in light of everybody thinking about the significance of light in the Exodus story, comes along and declares, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." He's saying that through him there is life. He is not the way, or rather, he's not pointing to a way of life, but he is the way to receive forgiveness of sins and eternal life. Well, as you read this story, what you see is that the Pharisees can't handle this. They don't think objectively about Jesus. No, they have bias, and they choose not to believe. But the question is, what about you? Can we set aside our personal bias and just objectively look at Jesus' claims and the things that he did, the miracles he performed, and namely his resurrection, which prove that everything he said about his identity, being the Son of God, being the light of the world, being the way, the truth, and the life, that these things are all true. They all add up because of what he did, and specifically the significance of his resurrection. You know, there was a man some years ago named Lee Strobel. You may have heard of him. He was a skeptic. He, like the Pharisees, had his own bias about Jesus. But his wife came to faith in Jesus, and so Lee decided to do some investigation. After all, he was an investigative reporter for the Chicago Tribune, so he knew how to investigate issues well. And he looked into Jesus, what he claimed and what he did. And here's what he said. He says, "As someone trained to deal with facts and logic, I wasn't willing to put my faith in wishful thinking or make-believe. I needed solid evidence that Jesus is indeed the unique Son of God. Based on scientific evidence, I became convinced that there is a creator of the universe, and based on historical data, I became confident in Jesus' claim to be the Son of God. He backed up that claim by returning from the dead." What about you? Where do you stand with Jesus? Maybe you still have a lot of questions about his identity. I would encourage you to read the Gospel of John with us over the next several days. Read and seek to objectively investigate Jesus' true identity. And I trust that as you do, you will see clearly that Jesus is indeed the Son of God. who offers us eternal life for all who believe in his name. And so can I just invite you to do this today? Just pray a simple prayer. Lord, I need you to reveal yourself to me. Would you speak to me through your word and help me to see clearly who Jesus is, what Jesus has done for me, and help me, Lord, to believe.